Good morning slash afternoon slash evening, everyone. We've all been there stuck, hesitant, second, guessing ourselves. It's not always the world that's in our way. Most often, it's us. We get in our own way with doubt, perfectionism, fear, and procrastination. But what if the solution to that obstacle isn't to become someone else, but to access another part of yourself? Todd Herman, a peak performance strategist, offers a powerful insight. If you want to break through, you need to stop letting the version of you that's driven by fear take the wheel. Instead, activate the version of you that is focused, confident, and bold. That version is already within you. You just have to call it forward. One of Todd's most powerful tools is the alter ego effect, the idea that you can step into a more courageous version of yourself on command to overcome the resistance that holds you back, whether it's the professional you, the creative you, or the leader you already know what to do. You just need to get the old stories and mental blocks out of the way. Here's the truth. You don't need to fix yourself. You need to stop listening to the voice that says you're not ready. Get out of your own way by learning to see your limiting beliefs. Challenge your self-image. Develop performance rituals. Use identity as a tool, not a trap. So today, I challenge you. What identity are you choosing? And what's possible if you stepped into your highest self, the one that isn't scared or stuck or small? Because everything you want is on the other side of you. Self-sabotage is often internal, not external. When people think about why they're not reaching their goals, they often point to external barriers, lack of time, money, connections, support, or opportunity. But in truth, the greatest obstacles we face are rarely outside of us. They're the invisible, internal forces we carry with us every day. Self-sabotage isn't always loud or obvious. Sometimes it's subtle. It shows up as hesitation when you need to act. It shows up as endless planning without execution. It disguises itself as procrastination, perfectionism, imposter syndrome, or fear of judgment. Todd Herman calls attention to this internal resistance. According to his philosophy, we each have what he calls a field of play, the arena in life where we're trying to perform, whether it's our career, relationships, health, or personal growth. And within that field, the voice that limits us the most is not the critic on the outside, it's the one in our own head. This inner voice tells us we're not ready yet, that we might fail, that others are more talented, more deserving, or more qualified. It keeps us operating from a place of fear and scarcity. Ironically, this voice often believes it's protecting us, keeping us safe from rejection or disappointment. But in reality, it's keeping us small, stuck, and stagnant. Self-sabotage also has a way of rationalizing itself. It's the voice that says, I just want it to be perfect before I share it, or I'm just being cautious, when really we're delaying because we're afraid of what happens after we take the leap. Fear of success can be just as paralyzing as fear of failure. That fear causes us to unconsciously avoid opportunities that might stretch us not because we can't handle them, but because we haven't yet trained our minds to handle the discomfort of growth. Todd's work invites us to shine a light on this hidden battle, to recognize that the enemy isn't always the environment. Sometimes it's our own mental habits, and that's actually good news, because what's internal is within our power to change. By learning to identify when you're in a self-sabotaging pattern, whether it's through negative self-talk, delaying tactics, or emotional reactivity, you give yourself the ability to disrupt it. You can choose to pause, challenge the thought, and act differently. You can learn to distinguish between your true voice, the one aligned with your values and vision, and the voice of fear that just wants to keep you in your comfort zone. Ultimately, self-sabotage is not a life sentence. It's a signal, a sign that you're on the edge of something meaningful. When you understand that, you stop seeing resistance as a roadblock and start seeing it as an invitation to grow. You already have a higher self within you. Many people spend years searching for the better version of themselves as if it exists somewhere far away, hidden behind success, money, or more experience. But one of the most liberating truths that Todd Herman teaches is this: the stronger, more capable, more courageous version of you isn't something you have to build from scratch. It's already within you, waiting to be activated. This higher self isn't about pretending or faking confidence. It's about reconnecting with the parts of you that already know how to lead, how to perform, how to show up with strength and clarity, the parts that might have been buried under years of fear, rejection, or self doubt. As we grow up, we often learn to suppress these parts to fit in, to play small, to be accepted. But that version of you, the one that's bold, focused, and relentless, is still there. It's not lost. It's just been quieted. Think back to moments in your life when you felt truly alive, when you were in flow, when you didn't hesitate to speak up, take charge, or dive in. Those moments weren't accidents. They were glimpses of your higher self in action, unfiltered, unafraid, and aligned with your potential. The problem isn't that you don't have what it takes. The problem is that you've spent too long believing you're not allowed to be that person all the time. You've learned to lead with the version of yourself shaped by fear, the overthinker, the people pleaser, the perfectionist, instead of the version shaped by vision and values. Todd's work emphasizes that the shift doesn't have to take years. It's about choice. Every day, you're choosing which version of you walks into the room. Are you choosing the self that's guided by insecurity and hesitation, or the self that is grounded in purpose, even when it's uncomfortable? You don't need to become someone else to succeed. You need to remove the mental clutter that's blocking access to who you already are at your best. Your higher self is not an invention, it's a return. A return to clarity, focus, and the inner knowing that you are capable of far more than your current results might suggest. When you stop arguing for your limitations and start aligning with your strengths, everything shifts. Confidence isn't something you wait for, it's something you access. The path to getting out of your own way begins with the realization that you're not missing anything. You're just not fully showing up as the version of you that already knows how to win. And the moment you give that version permission to take the lead, even if just for one conversation, one performance, or one tough decision, you begin to change the game entirely. Use the alter ego effect. One of Todd Herman's most powerful contributions to the world of personal development and performance psychology is his concept of the alter ego effect, a tool that has helped elite athletes, top executives, artists, and everyday people unlock higher levels of performance by stepping into a carefully crafted, purpose-driven identity. The alter ego effect isn't about pretending to be someone else. It's about tapping into a version of yourself that already exists, but has been overshadowed by fear, doubt, or limiting narratives. At its core, the alter ego effect is the intentional creation of a persona, a character that embodies the traits, behaviors, and mind set you need to succeed in a specific area of your life. This persona becomes a psychological armor that allows you to show up fully, powerfully, and without hesitation. And it works because it gives your brain permission to act differently, bypassing the emotional baggage and mental resistance associated with your usual self-image. Todd explains that we all already use alter egos, we just don't do it consciously. Think about the times you've put on a brave face in a stressful situation, or when you've said, I had to channel my inner insert hero here, whether it's Beyonce's Sasha Fierce, Kobe Bryant's Black Mamba, or a speaker imagining themselves as a powerful orator. Alter egos have long been used to unlock elevated states of action and courage. The genius of Todd's method lies in intentionality. Rather than hoping to feel more confident or disciplined, you proactively design an identity that already is. You give that identity a name, traits, sometimes even a physical trigger like glasses, clothing, or a specific object to signal the shift. This small ritual creates a psychological separation from the inner critic and allows the performer within you to take center stage. Let's say your goal is to be more assertive in leadership. You might create an alter ego named Commander Claire, calm, authoritative, strategic. Before stepping into a meeting, you remind yourself, I am not overthinking this. Commander Claire leads with purpose. That tiny mental shift can radically change how you enter the room, how you communicate, and how people respond to you. The alter ego effect is also powerful because it removes ego attachment. When you make mistakes or face criticism, it doesn't feel like a personal failure, it feels like feedback within a role you're playing for a purpose. That emotional buffer gives you more freedom to experiment, take risks, and grow without being paralyzed by fear of judgment. Another benefit is the ability to separate life roles. You can be nurturing at home and fierce at work. You can be playful with your kids and laser focused in competition. Each role can have its own alter ego, allowing you to shift gears more effectively without emotional conflict or confusion about who you're supposed to be. What Todd Herman's philosophy ultimately teaches us is that identity is flexible and powerfully so. You are not locked into one way of being. You can choose who shows up in your most important moments. And through consistent use, the traits of that alter ego don't just stay in the performance, they begin to integrate into your real self, raising your baseline of confidence and competence. The alter ego effect isn't an escape from reality, it's a strategic gateway into your highest potential. It gives you the tools to get out of your own way by bypassing the inner critic and letting the real performer take the lead. Don't wait to feel ready. One of the most common traps that holds people back across industries, ages, and ambitions is the belief that they need to feel ready before they can take action. This mindset sounds responsible on the surface. We tell ourselves we're just waiting until we have more experience, more confidence, more clarity, more validation. But in reality, that waiting often becomes a form of disguised fear, a delay tactic masked as preparation. Todd Herman emphasizes that readiness is not a feeling, it's a decision. The truth is, you may never feel 100% ready, and that's not because you're unqualified or incapable, it's because growth, by definition, involves discomfort. When you aim higher, stretch yourself, or step into something new, it's natural to feel uncertain. But waiting until all fear is gone before you act is like waiting for a storm to clear that was never going to pass. This is a critical mindset shift. Confidence doesn't come before action. Confidence comes after you take the action and prove to yourself that you can handle it. Think about it. No one becomes a skilled speaker, leader, athlete, or entrepreneur by reading about it and then waiting until they feel fully prepared. They get in the arena, they mess up, they learn. And with each step forward, they begin to build the muscle of self-trust. Todd's approach helps people realize that momentum is the antidote to fear. When you stop analyzing and start doing, you disrupt the mental loops that feed hesitation. Action, even small, imperfect steps, pulls you out of the emotional fog and into motion. And once you're in motion, clarity follows. You don't wait for confidence to speak on stage, you speak and become confident through the process. You don't wait to be fearless to launch your idea, you launch and develop courage by navigating the feedback and the unknown. There's a powerful concept in psychology called the confidence-competence loop. It means the more you do something, the more competent you become, and the more competent you feel, the more confident you become, which then motivates more action. But that loop can't begin if you're waiting on readiness as a prerequisite. Waiting to feel ready often also ties into perfectionism, the belief that everything has to be flawless before it's shown to the world. But perfectionism is just fear wearing a fancy suit. It's fear of judgment, fear of rejection, fear of failure disguised as high standards. And the cost of that fear is opportunity. While you're waiting, someone else is taking the spot, shipping the product, delivering the talk, stepping into the role. Todd challenges us to look at what we know needs to be done and do it, even if it feels awkward, messy, or unpolished. Because courage isn't the absence of fear. Courage is the decision that this matters more than my comfort right now. That's what moves the needle. The most successful people aren't necessarily the most talented or the most prepared. They're often just the ones who were willing to start before they felt ready. They understood that readiness is a myth and progress belongs to the people who move despite the uncertainty. Those who stop waiting and start doing are the ones who rewrite what's possible for themselves and for everyone watching. Rituals shape identity in the pursuit of personal growth and peak performance. Many people overlook one of the most accessible and transformative tools available to them: rituals. These are not just habits or routines, they are intentional acts that carry meaning, trigger mindset shifts, and reinforce identity. Todd Herman often highlights how top performers in sports, business, art, and leadership don't just rely on talent or motivation. They rely on rituals to anchor themselves in the identity they need to embody for success. Why do rituals matter so much? Because humans are pattern seeking creatures. Our brains thrive on cues, structure, and predictability. When you create a ritual, even something as small as putting on a specific watch, stepping into a pair of shoes, or saying a phrase to yourself, you're telling your mind it's time to perform. You're shifting gears from your everyday self to your purposeful self. These rituals act as bridges between identity and behavior. They help you leave behind distractions, doubt, or emotional clutter and step into clarity, focus, and confidence. For example, a hyper-forming athlete might have a ritual of tapping their chest 3 times before stepping onto the court. A CEO might play a specific song before every keynote presentation. A writer might light the same candle each time they sit down to create. These rituals may look trivial from the outside, but psychologically, they're powerful triggers for transformation. Todd Herman refers to these as activation triggers. State feels uncertain. This is why elite performers lean so heavily on them, not because they are superstitious, but because they understand that consistency in ritual leads to consistency in results. Rituals also train the brain to associate certain actions with performance. Over time, just beginning your ritual creates a neuro association that primes you for focus and engagement. Your body and mind begin to cooperate more quickly because they've been conditioned to understand, when I do this, I step into that version of myself. Even small, personal rituals can have massive ripple effects. Standing tall before a presentation, taking 3 deep breaths before answering a challenging question, writing a single sentence before beginning a long document. These micro moments are not insignificant. They're how identity is reinforced. They tell your subconscious, this is who I am now. Importantly, rituals are not about rigidity, they're about intentionality. They don't have to be elaborate or time-consuming. What matters is that they are meaningful to you. They reflect your values, your goals, and the identity you're committed to embodying. They become a symbol of your readiness, your power, and your trust in yourself. Todd's insight is this: you don't just show up as your best self by accident, you prepare for it. And rituals are one of the most effective, underutilized ways to do that. They help you get out of your own way by bypassing hesitation and guiding you straight into aligned action. You stop waiting to feel like a leader, an artist, or a high performer and start acting like one because you've trained your mind to know, this is who I become when I do this. Environment dictates performance. One of the most overlooked but deeply influential factors in personal growth and performance is your environment, not just your physical surroundings, but also your emotional, digital, and social environment. Todd Herman emphasizes that while mindset is critical, mindset alone cannot thrive in a toxic or misaligned environment. The truth is, you rise or fall to the level of the environments you consistently inhabit. Think about the spaces where you spend most of your time: your home, your office, your car, your phone. Are these environments reinforcing the identity you're trying to step into, or are they dragging you back into patterns you're trying to outgrow? Many people work hard to upgrade their mindset, but keep themselves surrounded by clutter, chaos, or negative influences that slowly erode their focus and energy. Todd's philosophy is simple: if you want to change your behavior, change what surrounds you. Just like athletes train in high-performance facilities designed for focus and excellence, everyday performers must create spaces that encourage their goals. That might mean reorganizing your workspace to minimize distraction. It might mean deleting certain apps, unfollowing certain people, or silencing the digital noise that pollutes your clarity. It could mean creating dedicated time blocks in your day where distractions are eliminated and deep work is prioritized. Environment is also about who you spend time with. Are the people around you challenging you, stretching you, believing in you, or are they subtly reinforcing fear, comfort, or mediocrity? Every conversation you have, every energy exchange leaves a residue. And over time, that residue either fuels your potential or feeds your resistance. Todd is clear on this point. If you want to play at a higher level, you need to curate your circle intentionally. This doesn't mean cutting off everyone who doesn't share your goals. But it does mean being honest about which voices get access to your energy and influence. You may need to limit exposure to people who constantly project fear, negativity, or self doubt. You may need to seek out mentors, coaches, or peer groups that normalize ambition and execution, because you will unconsciously calibrate to the average standard of the group you associate with most. Another dimension of environment is structure. Are your daily systems aligned with your desired identity? For instance, if you say you want to be a writer, but your space is filled with distractions and your calendar is packed with meetings, your environment is working against your goals. Conversely, when your tools are ready, your space is clean, your schedule is protected, and your triggers are aligned, you make it easier to act like the person you want to become. Todd teaches that high performers don't leave their environment to chance, they design it. Every object in the room, every item on the desk, every alert on the phone sends a signal. It says, this is what matters here. And when those signals are inconsistent or conflicting, it's no wonder your energy gets scattered or your confidence drops. But when the signals are clear and supportive, it becomes far easier to focus, to commit, and to act decisively. Finally, consider your internal environment, the thoughts you nurture, the emotions you feed, the narratives you repeat. Just like your physical surroundings, your internal world can either sabotage or support you. The stories you tell yourself about who you are and what you're capable of, these stories form the emotional ecosystem in which your identity lives. And that environment must be cultivated with as much intention as the external one. In essence, you become what your environment repeatedly tells you to become. So if you want to become a different kind of person, more focused, courageous, strategic, creative, ask yourself, does my environment reflect that version of me? If not, it's time to upgrade it. Because your environment isn't neutral, it's shaping you moment by moment, whether you realize it or not. Kill the invisible enemy, your narrative, one of the most insidious and difficult obstacles standing between you and your potential, isn't something external. It's not your job, your family, your financial situation, or your schedule. It's your internal narrative, the quiet, often unnoticed stories you tell yourself about who you are, what you're capable of, and what's possible for you. Todd Herman calls this the invisible enemy, and it's far more dangerous than most people realize, precisely because it's invisible, automatic, and familiar. Your narrative is the lens through which you interpret the world and your place in it. It's not necessarily based on facts, it's based on experiences, interpretations, wounds, assumptions, and beliefs you've absorbed over time. And once that story gets repeated enough, it begins to feel like truth. For example, if you've failed publicly in the past, you may now carry the narrative that you're not meant to lead. If someone once told you your ideas were unrealistic, you may now tell yourself that dreaming big is foolish. These narratives act like scripts you read from without even realizing it. And here's the dangerous part: you don't fight the enemy you can't see. That's why so many people stay stuck, not because they lack the skill or desire, but because they're unknowingly trapped inside a mental framework that makes bold action feel impossible or even irresponsible. Todd's challenge is this: interrogate your story. Ask yourself, what are the recurring thoughts I have about myself? Where did they come from? And who would I be without them? These are not easy questions, but they are essential. Because until you become aware of the narrative driving your actions or inaction, you'll never truly be in control of your behavior. You'll think you're making free choices when in reality you're acting out an old story that's long past its expiration date. Many of the most limiting narratives are subtle. They show up as I'm just not that kind of person, or I don't want to come off as arrogant, or I'm too old to change directions now. These may sound reasonable, but they are walls in disguise. And unless you examine them, you'll keep bouncing off those walls every time you try to expand your life. Todd teaches that changing your life starts with changing your identity at the story level. If you want to get out of your own way, you must consciously replace the old script with a new one, a story rooted in agency, possibility, and self-leadership. You don't need to be delusional or overly positive, but you do need to write a story that gives you permission to act, to grow, and to show up differently. That new story might sound like, I'm the kind of person who figures it out even if I've never done it before. I can feel fear and still take the next step. I don't need to be perfect to make an impact. I have everything I need to begin right now. Rewriting your narrative isn't a one-time event, it's a daily practice. The old story will try to sneak back in. It will whisper when you're tired, shout when you're rejected, and tempt you to retreat when things get hard. But each time you notice it and choose not to follow it, you weaken its grip. And every time you act from the new story, you reinforce it. You grow stronger. You shift from being someone who is controlled by their past to someone who is designing their future. Another way to defeat the invisible enemy is to externalize it, give it a name. Separate it from yourself. Todd often encourages people to talk about their inner critic like it's a character, because once you see it as not you, you stop giving it the authority to dictate your choices. It becomes easier to challenge, ignore, or even laugh at. And that separation is the beginning of true freedom. You are not your fears. You are not your past. You are not your worst moment or harshest thought. But as long as those stories remain unchallenged, they will define your ceiling. The path forward demands that you identify, confront, and ultimately rewrite the narrative that's been quietly holding the pen on your life. Because until you do, you'll keep getting in your own way, not because of who you are, but because of who you believe you are. Emotional fortitude is a superpower in a world obsessed with hacks, shortcuts, and quick wins. One of the most underappreciated and underdeveloped capacities in personal performance is emotional fortitude, the ability to feel uncomfortable emotions, stay grounded under pressure, and keep moving forward despite internal resistance. Todd Herman makes it abundantly clear. Skills and strategies are essential, but without emotional strength, they won't carry you far. Emotional fortitude is not about suppressing your feelings. It's not about pretending that things don't bother you or that you're always confident. Instead, it's about learning to navigate your emotions, not be hijacked by them. It's the ability to experience fear, doubt, anxiety, rejection, or embarrassment and still choose to act in alignment with your values and goals. Most people don't fail because they're unqualified. They fail, or more often, quit because they haven't developed the capacity to handle discomfort. They interpret emotional pain as a sign that something is wrong rather than a natural part of growth. Todd teaches that discomfort doesn't mean you're broken. It often means you're stretching, evolving, and brushing up against a bigger version of yourself. When you build emotional fortitude, you no longer need the world to cooperate in order to succeed. You don't wait for external validation, perfect conditions, or universal support. You move forward because you've trained yourself to tolerate tension, to stand inside the fire of your own doubt and keep breathing. That's what separates top performers from the rest, not talent alone, but emotional resilience under pressure. Let's break it down further. Emotional fortitude shows up in many ways. It's the founder who continues pitching their vision after 10 rejections. It's the athlete who misses the game-winning shot, feels the sting, and returns to practice the next day. It's the writer who publishes something vulnerable and resists the urge to take it down when criticism comes. It's the parent who stays patient during a tough conversation with their child rather than shutting down or snapping. It's the leader who admits a mistake, feels the shame, and still stands back up to lead again. Todd emphasizes that emotional fortitude is trainable. Just like physical endurance, it grows with repetition, exposure, and conscious effort. Every time you do something that makes you nervous, every time you resist the urge to retreat or lash out, every time you allow discomfort to be present without running from it, you are building this inner muscle. But here's the key: emotional fortitude doesn't develop by avoiding emotions. It grows when you face them head on. That means being honest with yourself, naming what you're feeling, sitting with discomfort long enough to recognize that it won't destroy you. Most people have never actually done this work, not because they're weak, but because the world teaches us to numb, distract, or over-intellectualize our emotions. Todd flips that on its head and says, feel it fully. Let it inform you, but don't let it own you. And emotional fortitude is not just about grit, it also includes emotional intelligence. The ability to regulate your inner world gives you power in the outer world. When you're no longer reactive, you make better decisions. When you can manage fear, you stay in the game longer than others. When you understand how emotions work, you stop being surprised by them and you start using them as signals rather than stop signs. There is profound liberation in realizing that you can feel fear and act anyway, that you can be heartbroken and still move forward, that you can be terrified of being judged and still raise your hand, share your idea, take the stage, or launch the project. Todd Herman sees emotional fortitude as the great equalizer, the thing that levels the playing field, because not everyone has access to elite coaches, unlimited resources, or decades of experience. But everyone has access to their inner world, and the person who learns how to master it, or at least stop being mastered by it, becomes unshakable in a world full of noise, pressure, and uncertainty. When you strengthen your emotional core, you become the kind of person who can carry the weight of your own ambition, not just when it's easy, but especially when it's hard. And that is what sets the real game changers apart from the ones who only dream about it. At the end of the day, the greatest battle you'll ever face isn't with the market, the competition, or your circumstances, it's with yourself. It's with the self, doubt that whispers, the procrastination that delays, the perfectionism that paralyzes, and the old narratives that quietly convince you to play small. But here's the truth Todd Herman reminds us of: you are not your fear. You are not your hesitation. You are not the mistakes of your past or the limitations others have placed on you. You are the person capable of choosing differently, capable of creating rituals that reinforce your power, crafting environments that support your purpose, and cultivating emotional strength that carries you through every storm. Getting out of your own way isn't a one-time fix, it's a practice, a mindset, a commitment, a decision you make every time you wake up and say, today, I'm not listening to the voice of limitation. Today, I'm showing up as who I truly am. So step aside. Let the best version of you step forward, because everything you want, it's waiting on the other side of you getting out of your own way.